Hey, it's Matt Moscona. You found it. It's AFR Saints, your home for daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Please subscribe, smash the like button, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And our content this football season is presented by BetUS. Score a 150% bonus on your first deposit and a 125% bonus on your next two deposits up to $2,000 when you use the promo code YouTube150. Enjoy the video. Who dat? We know the Saints this past weekend with their loss to the Chargers suffered their sixth consecutive loss. That hadn't happened since 2005, the Katrina season. Our buddy Jon Stinchcomb was on that team, and he's always good enough to lend us some insights, good enough to join us here. Jon, we appreciate it, man. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
I mean, we always appreciate you. Let me ask that sort of obvious question. From a player's perspective, what's it like in the locker room, man, whenever you're going through something like this and you just can't seem to get a win?
Yeah, I think you really lean on your leadership, and you want some of those senior voices to be the loudest. Obviously, there's going to be grumbling. There's going to be some undercurrent of displeasure, and rightfully so in some space. I mean, 6 losses in a row, you get to the point where you just have to stop the bleeding. And, there's plenty of reasons and a checklist of excuses, if you will, as to what points to how you get yourself in that kind of situation. But when you find yourself there, I think what's most important is the ability to kind of circle the wagons and know that there were opportunities and there will be more. And it's a matter of, fixing the things that you can, because there's still a heck of a lot of football left to be played.
There's it's interesting whenever I get to talk to guys like you, Jon, because obviously you have the player's perspective, but now you also are an analyst, so you can wear that cap as well. So when I talk to Jon Stinchcomb, the player, I know you're going to look and say, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of games left. You just take them one at a time. You go win. When you take a step back and you look at it as an analyst and you look at the Saints team, like, what realistically is there for them this year?
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the locker room, the word is, hey, we're all professionals here, and you're getting compensated well for what you do. So there isn't really an option to just pack up your bags early and fold the tents and just be like, all right, well, better luck next year. From the outside looking in, you're talking about what direction do you want this organization to go? And specifically, your name is attached to it. So for every player in there, there is going to be a review at the end of the year as to how you deal with adversity. And whether they like it or not, you are where you are. And a 6-loss run is never fun to be a part of, but what are you going to do about it? And so I think the bigger question is, don't look up. Don't look at, what are our chances and what about the playoffs? You're not there. And what you need to be worried about is, how do we win one game? How do we win this next game?
We'll get right back to the video, but always our pleasure to remind you this football season about our partners at BetUS. And right now, they're offering you a 150% deposit bonus on your first deposit and a 125% bonus on your next two deposits up to $2,000. Be sure to use the promo code YouTube150. Let me show you how easy it is to use BetUS. Let's make our bets for this week. If you go to the homepage there, you can click on football, You'll see the NFL odds for Week 9. We know the Saints are going to play at noon against Carolina, so one of the first games there in that noon Central to 1 Eastern window. Saints all the way up to 7. And you know what? As crazy as it sounds, I'm going to lay it. Carolina has been awful. They have no defense. Saints should be getting Derek Carr back this week. You come over here to the risk window. How much do we want to risk? Let's say $25. We'll tap place my bet. It'll ask me to confirm. Tap, and just like that, we are locked in. There's my confirmation slip. $25 on the Saints to cover 7. May God be with me. And we do it all easily over at BetUS. Remember, a 150% bonus on your first deposit, 125% bonus on your next two deposits, up to $2,000. Be sure to use that promo code YouTube150. Now, enjoy the rest of the video. You all broke that streak back in '05 with a win over the Jets. Your bye week was actually in between, so it was 6 games, but it was 7 weeks because of the bye week in between. You remember anything about that Jets game when you all broke free and got the win?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the year I spent most of it. I spent the entirety of it on IR. I ruptured my patella tendon, and the whole team is bouncing across the country from San Antonio. Post Katrina, I was doing rehab both in San Antonio and Atlanta, splitting the difference, and it was. As football goes, you try to forget as much as possible about that season as you can.
Sure.
And just recognize that there's brighter days ahead. But I know this, the atmosphere each week gets worse and worse. And, you're just trying to focus on what you can control in the short term. And I don't remember the specifics of that Jets game, but I do remember as that season went on, you start to feel more and more of the weight of the losses as they pile up, and you're just trying to do whatever you can to break free from it.
Jon Stinchcomb is our guest. So with that in mind, when you look at this Saints team right now, and obviously injuries have been a big part of what's happened here, but do you see positives that you can move forward with?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still a culture of good quality leadership. I think signing back Alvin Kamara is a good sign of it. When you saw that primetime game and it was being called into question whether or not you're just rolling over and taking it, that's a challenge for any locker room. And immediately folks are calling for Coach Allen's job, and you can't motivate the guys anymore. And whether you read every line of what's written about you or not, you hear the grumbling. And I think that the positive signs are you still have Demario Davis in that locker room. You still have Cam in that locker room. You still have Derek Carr, even though he's not suited up, in that locker room. And they came back and at least were swinging against the Chargers. I think we've seen other teams that have kind of packed up their bags and go through the motions. I didn't see that from the Saints. I think they're still fighting as they should be. So I think that is a positive sign.
John, a week from today is the trade deadline. Dennis Allen was asked on his coach's show Monday about that, and he said flatly the Saints are not sellers. When you look at the team, and I'm outside of this season, now I'm asking you like a much bigger picture question. How do you think they should approach the trade deadline, taking a look at at the organization, the roster in total right now?
Yeah, it's tough because for years the Saints have kind of robbed Peter to pay Paul, and you look at the January and February rolls around, and you look at the cap and what the maneuvering that needs to take place, and you're going, golly, it's a hard place to be. But if you're in that window where you feel like you could win, it's justifiable. And now where you're not in that window, where you're not playing for titles and championships at the end of the season, it's a little bit harder to rectify some of those bills that are going to come due. And I'm not saying this is a full rebuild mode and let's hit the eject button, but I think it's in the conversation. And I think you look at this next month and a half of football, and that will strongly determine what you need to do. And, I wouldn't expect Coach Allen to say they are sellers. As a matter of fact, I would be pretty upset if he did. That's not him. I wouldn't want a head coach that's saying, golly, that things haven't played out well. We're just going to look to rebuild for next year and try to get our books in a better position. That's not the leadership that I would want in this setting, at least not from the head coach spot. Now, for other seats on the bus, you're going, well, you look at the roster cap, you look at the age of some of the players, you look at the opportunities that the Saints have in the division long term, and I think that's a different conversation. It's just a really hard one to have at this point in the season.
Hey, John, what do you think they're obviously better. Shocking here, but every team's going to be better with your starting quarterback. They're going to be better with Derek Carr. What do you think is a ceiling with Derek Carr in this team?
Well, I tell you what, you watch those first 2 weeks, and I realized one of those was against the woeful Carolina Panthers. But you go, man, they played some really, really good football. And I think one of the concerns is we're talking about, roster situations and the cap influence on it. One of the biggest concerns coming into this season is a lack of depth, because you're so strapped that you can invest in ones, but really you just don't have space to get the high level performing two, that if something, God forbid, happens to your first string, that you don't have that big of a drop off. What we've seen is, unfortunately, the Saints have had to rely on some of those second and third string guys, and there is a considerable drop off. So it's a real challenge. And I think you look across the league, and there are some other rosters that are outperforming what their roster should say that they can win, at least on paper. And I think that's where the Saints are going to need to live. They're going to need to outperform what the expectations are from here on out.
Like Cam Jordan said on Twitter the other day, just a very different, unfamiliar situation for a lot of guys in that organization right now who haven't tasted this amount of losing. Hopefully they can turn it around. Jon Stinchcomb, former Saints offensive lineman, does a great job. John, we appreciate a couple minutes as always, man. Thank you.
Hey, I enjoy it. I'll be a Houdat for life, even through the struggles.
Let's go.
I'm still hopeful that they can turn things around and play some good football.
I guess if there's one good sign, John, what you all went through in 2005 and that bottoming out at 3 wins, a year later, you're in the NFC Championship game. It can happen that quickly with the right ingredients in the NFL. Hopefully this team can find it. Thanks, John.
Yes, sir.
Thanks so much for watching the video. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, hit the bell so you're notified when we post a new video, and remember to support BetUS, where right now you can get a 150% bonus on your first deposit and a 125% bonus on your next 2 deposits up to $2,000. Be sure to use that promo code YouTube150.